Peace. Have you ever watched a storm roll in? Thunder crashing, lightning tearing the sky apart, and yet somewhere in the middle of that chaos, there's a bird sitting silently in its nest, calm and unmoved. Peace. That is not fear. That is power. That is presence. You see, silence isn't weakness. It's not surrender. Silence is often the loudest roar. Peace. And the one who doesn't rush to defend herself isn't the one who has nothing to say. It's the one who doesn't need to speak. Today, I want you to unlearn something society has forced down your throat. Peace. That every silence must be filled, that every accusation must be answered, that every time someone misunderstands you, you must clear your name, justify your stance, or prove your worth. No, that's not sovereignty. Peace. That's slavery to noise. A queen doesn't beg for understanding. A queen doesn't chase clarity in chaos. A queen knows that explanation is not obligation. Peace. Because truth doesn't demand attention. It stands unshaken, even when surrounded by doubt. And you too can stand in that truth, in that stillness. Peace. With your head high and your lips sealed, not because you're scared, but because you've ascended beyond the need to be loud. Think about the times when you've been misunderstood. Peace. Maybe you were called arrogant because you set boundaries. Maybe you were labeled cold because you chose self-respect over people-pleasing. Maybe you were accused of being too distant, too quiet, too complicated. Peace. And maybe you thought, just for a second, should I explain myself? Should I speak just to make them comfortable? But deep down, you knew that explaining yourself would only shrink you. Peace. That to silence your silence would be to hand your crown over to noise. We live in a world that worships noise. Opinions everywhere, judgment everywhere, screens full of words. Peace. People constantly speaking just to fill the silence. But a true queen knows this power is not in what you shout. Power is in what you withhold. Silence is not empty. It's sacred. Peace. It is not passive, it is a weapon, a tool, a throne. In every woman's life comes a moment when she must choose between proving her worth or preserving her peace. And in that moment, peace, what she chooses reveals whether she's merely reacting or ruling. And when she chooses silence, she is not walking away from the battle, she is rising above it, because a queen does not scream in the streets. Peace. She lets her legacy speak. When you truly know who you are, you don't need to keep repeating it to anyone. There is a quiet strength in self-awareness that doesn't crave recognition. Peace. The world often confuses loudness with confidence, but a woman who has mastered herself understands that the loudest voices are sometimes the most unsure. She doesn't have to raise her tone, over-explain. Peace. Or defend every move she makes. She walks into a room and the energy shifts, not because she demands attention, but because she carries presence. Her aura speaks louder than her words ever could. Peace. The need to constantly be seen, validated, or understood fades the moment you recognize your own worth. This inner authority is not given by titles, applause, or approval. It is cultivated by deep self-respect. Peace, reflection, and the ability to be with oneself in truth. It's the kind of knowing that doesn't shake when questioned, doesn't shatter under pressure, and doesn't dilute itself to make others comfortable. Peace, silence, when it comes from clarity, is not a void, it's a vibration. It's felt in how you move, how you pause, how you look someone in the eye without flinching, without needing to explain your silence. Peace. People sense when someone knows themselves, even if they can't put it into words. You become unshakable, not because you've built walls, but because you've built wisdom. Peace. When others speak to impress or to dominate, you listen not because you're passive, but because you don't feel the need to compete. You no longer measure your importance by how many people agree with you. Peace. You understand that truth isn't a democracy. It doesn't become truer just because others validate it. And so you allow yourself to step back, to observe, to respond only when necessary. Peace. You become intentional with your words, aware that power lies in restraint. You're not withholding because you're unsure, you're withholding because you've learned the value of selective speech. Peace. This is the essence of royal silence. It's not about ignoring others. It's about refusing to explain your spirit to those who haven't earned access to it. Some will call it arrogance. Peace. But that's only because they expect you to perform humility as an apology for your power. But when you stop needing to explain, you stop needing permission to exist fully. Peace. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into narratives that were never written for you. You understand that not everyone deserves a front row seat to your story, and especially not the parts you've worked hard to heal. Peace. You realize that when you start answering every critic, every assumption, every whisper, you dilute your energy. You trade your crown for crumbs of validation. And for what? To be liked, to be understood. Peace. A queen is not understood by all, she is recognized by those who see her for who she is. And that is enough. There is also power in letting your actions speak. Peace. There's nothing louder than a woman who keeps growing without making announcements. while others are busy explaining their intentions. You're executing your vision. You're focused on alignment, not approval. Peace. You stop playing defense and start living in purpose. People might not understand your silence, but they'll feel your presence. They'll watch your consistency, your calm, peace, your evolution, and they'll realize that silence is an absence. It's a language, a choice, a declaration. It's saying, I don't need to perform. I don't need to be loud to be right. And slowly, peace. Your silence becomes a symbol of mastery. In a world full of oversharing, overtalking, and overproving, choosing silence is revolutionary. It is a rebellion against the need to be constantly seen. Peace. Constantly justified, constantly liked. It is choosing to anchor in your essence, not your image. And that takes courage. It's not easy to walk away from an argument. Peace. It's not easy to stay silent when you're misunderstood, but it's divine to do so when you know that clarity within is stronger than chaos outside. You stop being reactionary and start being deliberate. Peace. Every step, every word, every silence becomes sacred. You are no longer moved by noise. You are led by knowing. That knowing is your inner compass. It guides you when others question your path. Peace. It steadies you when criticism tries to unbalance you. It reminds you that your worth was never up for debate. And from that place, you can sit silently, not in weakness, not in fear, but in quiet command. Peace. People may misread your silence. Let them. Their interpretation is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to your peace, your vision, your crown. This kind of silence doesn't come overnight. Peace. It comes from falling and rising, from being broken and rebuilding, from learning the difference between noise and truth. Peace. It comes from looking in the mirror and realizing that you no longer have to explain why you are the way you are. You've done the work, you've made the sacrifices, you've endured the storms, and now, peace. You sit in silence not because you have nothing to say, but because you finally understand that you don't need to say it. And that is the mark of a queen. Peace. There is a subtle danger in always feeling the need to explain yourself. What begins as a desire to be understood can quickly become an invitation for others to misinterpret, diminish, and dissect your truth. Peace. Not everyone you speak to is qualified to hold your story with care. In fact, many are waiting for you to hand over your words just so they can reshape them into something you never meant. Peace. That is the trap of explanation. It assumes the other person is ready to listen, ready to understand, and most importantly, ready to respect. But more often than not, peace. Those demanding an explanation are not looking for clarity. They are looking for a crack in your confidence. They want something to challenge, twist, or invalidate. A queen knows this. Peace. She recognizes that every explanation comes with a cost, and she does not spend her energy proving herself to people who see her strength as a threat. Peace. When you attempt to explain your boundaries to someone who resents them, you give them a chance to negotiate your standards. When you try to justify your silence to someone who is addicted to chaos, peace, you end up feeding the very noise you're trying to escape. And when you feel pressure to clarify your values to someone who doesn't even honor their own, you drain yourself for the sake of appearances. Peace. You lose time, peace, and dignity. That's the cruel reality of over-explaining. It doesn't bring connection, it brings compromise. It asks you to package your pain in a way that makes others feel comfortable. Peace. It demands you dilute your decisions so others won't feel offended. But self-respect and explanation rarely walk together. The moment you step into the arena to justify your every move, peace. You become a performer in someone else's theater, acting out scenes that were never yours to begin with. It's important to remember that not everyone who asks a question is worthy of an answer. Peace. Some people ask not to understand but to provoke. They push for explanations not to find truth but to find fault. They want you to stumble over your words, to get defensive. Peace. To expose something they can use against you later. This is especially true when your silence has disrupted their control. Your refusal to engage threatens their sense of superiority. Peace. So they demand a response, not out of concern but out of insecurity. They can't stand the mystery of your silence because it forces them to confront themselves. And rather than doing that work, peace, they try to drag you into theirs. A queen, however, does not play that game. She understands that by staying silent, she denies them the fuel they crave. She keeps her dignity intact and her intentions pure. Peace, not by hiding but by holding. Explanation in the wrong hands becomes ammunition. You might start by sharing your truth, but before long it's weaponized against you. Peace. Words you offered in vulnerability are twisted into judgments. Your reasons become rumors. Your clarity becomes controversy. And what started as an effort to connect ends in betrayal. This is why discernment is vital. Peace. Not every situation deserves your voice. Not every person deserves your reasons. There is nothing noble in being transparent with those who only see through filters of ego and assumption. Sometimes, peace. Your silence is the highest form of protection you can offer yourself. It is the boundary that says, I don't owe you access to my inner world. And in that boundary lies your freedom. Peace. It takes strength to withhold an explanation, especially when your silence is being misread. The urge to correct someone's perception, to defend your character, to fix the narrative, it's natural. Peace. But it's also a trap. Every moment spent explaining yourself to someone who's already made up their mind is a moment stolen from your peace. A queen does not chase after false stories to burn them down. Peace. She lets them collapse under the weight of their own lies. She understands that truth is self-sustaining. It doesn't need a spotlight, it doesn't need a speech. Peace. It just needs time, and time always reveals what needs to be seen. So she waits, she watches, she reigns. There is deep power in the refusal to explain. It sends a message. Peace. I am not available for interrogation. It tells the world, my life is not a courtroom, and I am not on trial. You are allowed to walk away without giving a reason. You are allowed to change, grow. Peace. Set boundaries and protect your energy without sending out press releases about it. You are not required to sit at a table and unpack your entire soul for people who will only question its worth. Peace. When you stop over-explaining, you reclaim your energy, you take your crown back from the hands of those who tried to debate your right to wear it. You rise above their noise, not in arrogance, but in wisdom. Peace. The truth is, those who really understand you don't need explanations, and those who constantly demand them rarely deserve them. You don't need to speak to be seen. You don't need to explain to be valid. Peace. Your power is not proven in your ability to argue. It's proven in your ability to remain unmoved when others try to shake you. A queen does not defend herself at every whisper. Peace. She lets her silence echo with the kind of authority that doesn't just demand respect, it commands it. Peace. There is a profound distinction between silence that is rooted in fear and silence that is anchored in emotional intelligence. One is a retreat, the other is a response. Peace. A woman who chooses silence not because she's intimidated, but because she's intentional, wields a different kind of strength, one that many cannot comprehend. It is not that she lacks the words, she has them. Peace. She has enough clarity, wit, and insight to dismantle any argument and expose every falsehood, but she also possesses the wisdom to ask herself, peace. Is it worth it? That simple question separates the reactive from the regal. Emotional intelligence teaches restraint, and restraint is not weakness, it's mastery. When someone insults you, provokes you, peace, or tries to pull you into chaos, the instinctive reaction is to defend, argue, retaliate, but the emotionally intelligent woman pauses, she breathes, she scans the moment, not with emotion but with clarity. Peace. She understands that not every situation deserves the weight of her energy. Her silence is not her inability to respond, it is her unwillingness to step down from her throne to entertain nonsense. Peace. The world may call her cold, arrogant, distant, but what the world calls cold, she calls composed. What they label arrogance, she knows as awareness. Peace. She no longer feels the urge to convince others of her truth because she understands something vital: reactions are expensive, and silence is the currency of those who value peace. Peace. People often confuse silence with passivity, but silence chosen consciously is the ultimate power move. It says, I have mastered the art of self-control. When your emotions are screaming to speak, peace. When your ego is begging to prove itself and you still choose stillness, that is emotional maturity. It means you've elevated beyond the need to always be right, always be heard, always be seen. Peace. You are no longer living to be understood, you are living to be aligned. And alignment doesn't require noise, it requires discernment. When to speak, when to be still, when to walk away, peace, and when to let the silence say everything. The emotionally intelligent woman knows that arguments are rarely about truth. Most of the time, they're about power, ego, control, peace. They are performances in which people talk not to understand, but to win. She has no interest in winning battles that will cost her peace. She has nothing to prove because she already knows who she is. Peace. Her silence becomes her shield, her sanctuary, her strength, and while others burn themselves out trying to be heard, she replenishes her power in quiet reflection. She is not disengaged, she is discerning. Peace. She is not absent, she is aware. Her silence is strategic, not submissive. This kind of silence unsettles people. It frustrates those who expect a reaction. They poke, they prod, they bait. peace, hoping for an explosion that never comes. And when she stays quiet, they feel powerless because they are used to controlling narratives through volume, manipulation, guilt, peace. But when they meet a woman who refuses to be emotionally hijacked, who meets fire with calm, who meets chaos with presence, their tactics fail. Her silence exposes their noise. It reveals how uncentered they are. Peace, how desperate they are for reaction to validate their aggression. But she doesn't give them that. She lets them unravel while she remains rooted. Peace. That is the power of emotional intelligence. It deactivates drama without engaging in it. In relationships, in workplaces, in family dynamics, this form of silence becomes a lighthouse. It guides her decisions. Peace. When others are gossiping, she stays silent because she knows her character doesn't need public defense. When someone tries to provoke her, peace. She pauses because she refuses to let temporary emotions create permanent damage. When she is disrespected, she doesn't retaliate, she distances. And in that distance, her silence speaks volumes. It says, peace, I saw what you did, I understand what it means, and I will not lower myself to your level to address it. That choice isn't made out of fear, it's made out of self-worth. Peace. This silence is also deeply connected to self-trust. It means she trusts herself enough to not always need the last word. She trusts her values enough to not abandon them for the sake of being right. Peace. She trusts that truth will reveal itself without her having to force it. It is a silent confidence that radiates through her presence. She knows that people who misunderstand her silence will always find fault. Peace. So she stops over-explaining, she stops pleading, she stops performing, she starts preserving her energy, her time, her dignity. In the end, peace. It's not that she can't respond, it's that she no longer wants to waste herself on what doesn't grow her. Peace. Emotional intelligence has taught her that silence is not just an absence of words, it is an intentional act of power. It is knowing that your peace is sacred and that not every battle is yours to fight. Peace. It is understanding that sometimes the most profound answer you can give is none at all, because your silence, chosen wisely, will echo louder than any speech ever could. Peace. There is an unspoken genius in choosing to stay silent, especially when every fiber in you wants to respond, not because you don't have the words, because you understand their value. When you choose silence, peace, you're not just avoiding conflict, you're creating space. And in that space, something remarkable happens. People begin to reveal themselves. In the absence of your voice, their true nature emerges. Peace. When you no longer feed the noise with your attention, the mask begins to slip, and the reality of their character starts to show. Peace. This is one of the most powerful lessons a queen learns. She does not need to defend or argue to uncover the truth. She just needs to observe, because silence is a mirror, and in it, peace. People reflect who they truly are when they can no longer manipulate your reaction. It's easy to pretend when there's constant back and forth. As long as you're explaining, arguing, clarifying, peace. People can keep up their performance. But when you stop responding, when you no longer give them the satisfaction of your emotional energy, their facade begins to crumble. Peace. Silence removes the shield of your attention. It forces others to fill the space you've left behind, and in doing so, they start to show you what was hidden beneath the surface all along. Peace. Some will reveal bitterness, some will show insecurities, some will become loud, erratic, defensive, and others will simply walk away because without your voice, they no longer have control. Peace. Your silence becomes the pressure that cracks the mask. That's the beauty of holding your peace. It doesn't just protect you, it exposes others. People often say, peace. Silence is golden, but they rarely understand why. It's not golden because it's passive or quiet. It's golden because it's insightful. It gives you the gift of discernment. When you speak less, peace, you hear more. When you pause instead of react, you begin to notice details. The way someone deflects responsibility, the way they project blame, peace. The way they grow uncomfortable when they can't manipulate your emotions. Those small cues tell you everything you need to know. And you didn't have to ask a single question. You simply watched. Peace. You let their actions fill the silence. That is power beyond comprehension in a world addicted to noise. Silence is strategic. It allows you to gather information without giving any away. Peace. It keeps your emotions private while the other person reveals theirs. In silence, you become the observer, the one in control of the emotional current. While others rush to speak, to defend, to be heard, peace. You remain still, listening, collecting truths hidden in tone, body language, inconsistencies. And often, what people say in your silence is more revealing than anything they would have said in a debate. Peace. They don't realize they're unraveling. They don't notice that in their desperation to fill the quiet, they're exposing wounds, fears, insecurities. That's the brilliance of silence. It doesn't force. Peace. It invites, and in that invitation, truth walks in without needing to be chased. You also begin to recognize who's genuine and who's performative. Peace. The people who truly respect you won't be shaken by your silence. They won't panic, accuse, or lash out. They'll lean in with empathy. They'll ask, not assume. They'll give you space, peace, not pressure you for an immediate explanation. But the ones who feel entitled to your every word, who grow angry at your lack of response, those are the ones who never valued your voice in the first place. Peace. They only valued their ability to control it. Your silence threatens their illusion of power, and so they try to pull you back in. But you've already seen enough. Their reaction to your silence told you everything. Peace. It also shifts the power dynamic. When you stop engaging, you stop feeding the fire, you break the cycle, you no longer participate in the emotional tug of war. Peace. And the other person is left with their own reflection, something they've likely avoided for years. Your silence acts as a mirror, and for many, peace. It's the first time they've had to face themselves without distraction. Some will resist, some will attack, but others will begin to reflect. They'll question, adjust, grow. And that transformation, if it comes, peace, doesn't require your voice, it required your absence. Silence also teaches you about yourself. It shows you where your triggers are, where your patience lies, how deep your understanding runs. Peace. It becomes a practice of self-mastery. You begin to distinguish between moments that require your voice and moments that require your stillness. Peace. You learn that silence doesn't mean you're avoiding the truth. It means you're waiting for it to arrive on its own. And when it does, peace. It's far more powerful than anything you could have forced into existence through words. Because a truth that rises from silence has weight. It's undeniable. It doesn't need to be proven. In silence, peace. You learn how to see, not just look, but see. You observe the way people handle pressure, how they respond when they no longer have the upper hand, how they behave when they're not being entertained. Peace. And through that lens, you begin to separate those who are aligned with your growth from those who were only ever invested in your attention. Peace. You no longer get pulled into emotional traps because you see them before they're set. You recognize manipulation, projection, gaslighting, not because someone told you peace, but because your silence allowed those patterns to emerge naturally. That kind of vision cannot be bought. It's earned in the quiet moments when you choose not to react, not to engage, but to listen. Peace. And in that listening, you reclaim your power. You stop being the reactor and become the revealer. You allow others to tell on themselves, to paint the full picture with their own colors. Peace. All you had to do was step back. All you had to do was let silence do what words never could. Peace is not something that simply arrives one day. It is something you must choose, over and over again. Peace, it is something you must protect like a sacred flame, especially in a world that constantly tries to extinguish it with chaos, drama, and emotional noise. Peace. And one of the most powerful ways to guard your peace is through silence. Not the silence of defeat or suppression, but the silence of self-preservation and discernment. The kind of silence that says, peace. I value my mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being too much to hand it over to your dysfunction. Every time you decide not to engage in a meaningless argument, not to respond to a passive, aggressive comment, peace. Not to explain yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you, you are making a profound statement that your peace is worth more than their approval, their validation, or their chaos. Peace. Silence is not just the absence of sound, it is a boundary. It's a decision to preserve your energy instead of scattering it into situations that offer no return. In the past, maybe you felt obligated to speak up. Peace. To defend yourself, to explain your intentions to people who never truly listened. But every time you did that, you gave away pieces of your peace. Peace. You handed over your calm in exchange for a temporary feeling of being heard, only to realize later that nothing changed. Because the truth is, some people don't want understanding, they want access. Peace. Access to your mind, your emotions, your reactions. And when you stop giving that access, when you choose silence instead of engagement, they feel powerless. Not because you've disrespected them, peace, but because you've stopped sacrificing yourself for their comfort. There's something deeply empowering about choosing not to participate in every emotional invitation sent your way. Peace. You begin to understand that not every message needs a reply, not every accusation needs a defense, not every misunderstanding needs your involvement. Some things are better left untouched. Peace. Not because you're avoiding them, but because addressing them would cost you too much. The emotional toll of constantly defending your name, explaining your choices, peace, and clarifying your silence is too high when it yields so little. Peace requires you to be selective, not cold but careful. Because your energy is sacred, and the more you spend it on trivial battles, peace, the less you have left for the things that truly matter. your healing, your growth, your purpose. It is tempting to respond when someone challenges you, peace, especially when they distort your truth or question your intentions. But emotional intelligence whispers, let it go. Silence becomes your armor, your refuge. Peace, your declaration that you are not available for chaos disguised as conversation. People may try to provoke you, bait you, pull you into conflict, but when you do not react, you are not being weak, you are being wise. Peace, you are choosing not to engage in the kind of energy that disturbs your inner world. You are honoring your peace by refusing to let others control your emotional temperature. This silence, this refusal to engage, peace becomes a quiet revolution within you. You begin to realize that your worth is not measured by how loud you are, how often you speak up, or how well you defend yourself. Peace, it is measured by how well you protect your inner sanctuary. Your peace is not negotiable. And once you experience the power of silence in maintaining that peace, you start to use it more often, not out of fear or suppression, but out of alignment with who you are becoming. The more grounded you become, the less you need to explain yourself. The more centered you feel, peace, the less you're pulled into meaningless noise. People might not understand your silence. They might interpret it as avoidance or weakness. But you will know it is neither. It is a conscious peace, powerful choice to prioritize your mental clarity over meaningless validation. It is the discipline of saying, peace, I will not sacrifice my peace just to make you feel better about misunderstanding me. And this choice over time becomes a lifestyle. You stop entertaining unnecessary drama. You stop over-explaining. Peace. You stop rushing to clear every misperception because you've come to realize that the right people won't need all that. They'll feel your energy, they'll sense your truth. And those who don't, peace, they were never aligned with your peace in the first place. There will be moments when you're tempted to break the silence, to speak just to defend your name, to react out of hurt or frustration. Peace. But remember, each time you stay silent when the noise around you demands chaos, you strengthen the walls of your inner castle. You teach yourself that you are not at the mercy of other people's storms. Peace. You do not need to throw words into the fire just to feel seen. You are seen by the peace that surrounds you, by the stillness that protects you. And that stillness, once cultivated, becomes your greatest power. Peace. Peace is not loud. It doesn't announce itself or demand attention. It moves quietly, gracefully. It walks away when needed, chooses solitude when necessary, and speaks only when it serves growth. Peace. Your silence doesn't mean you're suppressing your voice. It means you're choosing when and how to use it. You are no longer giving everyone front row seats to your emotions. Peace. You are no longer placing your serenity on the table for others to toss around. Your peace is priceless. And your silence, that's how you protect it, maintain it, and grow within it. Peace. There comes a point in every woman's journey where she realizes that her silence isn't just about staying quiet, it's about self-respect. Peace, it's about knowing her worth so deeply that she no longer feels the need to beg for understanding, to chase validation, or to defend her choices. When a woman truly steps into her power, peace, she no longer uses her voice as a tool for approval. She uses it with intention, with precision, and with purpose. And sometimes that purpose is best served by withholding words altogether. Peace. Silence becomes a reflection of how much she values herself. Not everyone deserves access to her inner world. Not every situation requires her explanation. The more she honors herself, peace, the more she understands that some things are too sacred to be spoken, too pure to be explained to people who would only misunderstand them anyway. Peace. Respecting yourself doesn't always look like standing up and shouting your truth in the face of judgment. Sometimes it looks like walking away from a conversation that is no longer worthy of your presence. Peace. It looks like choosing not to respond to provocation. It looks like ignoring the need to correct someone's perception of you. It's not about being cold or distant. It's about realizing that your energy, peace, your story, and your truth are not up for public debate. When a woman holds herself in high regard, she does not treat her voice like a currency that can be exchanged for temporary peace or social approval. Peace. She does not use her words to beg for what she already knows she deserves: respect, understanding, and freedom. Silence rooted in self-respect is different from silence that comes from fear. One is empowering, peace, the other is paralyzing. But when you've done the inner work, when you've fought the quiet battles no one else saw, peace, when you've learned to sit with your own discomfort and rise from it, you begin to understand the value of protecting your spirit. You stop offering your vulnerability to people who haven't earned it. Peace. You stop allowing every confrontation to become a courtroom where you must prove your character. You stop justifying your evolution to those who only knew past versions of you. Peace. That is what self-respect sounds like. It sounds like silence in the face of small minds and loud opinions. It sounds like stillness when others are trying to shake your core. And it feels like peace. Peace, the kind that doesn't come from being understood, but from understanding yourself. There is something undeniably powerful about a woman who no longer reacts, not because she's numb, but because she's wise. Peace. She's learned the hard way that reactions often lead to regrets. She's seen how her words can be twisted, how her explanations can be dismissed, how her openness can be used as ammunition. Peace. And so she has chosen something different, not to be silent out of fear, but to be silent out of strength. She respects herself too much to keep showing up in spaces that do not honor her presence. Peace. Her silence is not the absence of thought or feeling. It is the presence of deep understanding. It is the quiet, steady confidence that says, I do not need to fight to prove my truth. Peace. My truth just is. In a world that expects women to always be agreeable, always be pleasant, always explain themselves so others feel comfortable, choosing silence can feel like rebellion. Peace. But it's not rebellion, it's alignment. It's choosing to center yourself in a life that has tried to pull you in every direction. It's choosing to respond only when it serves your growth. Peace, not just to meet someone else's expectations. And it's in that choice that you begin to reclaim your time, your energy, your boundaries. You stop over apologizing. Peace. You stop softening your truth so others won't be offended. You stop oversharing in hopes that someone will finally see you. Because now you see yourself, and that vision is enough. Peace. Self-respect is about trusting your intuition more than the noise around you. It's about knowing when your silence speaks louder than any explanation ever could. When you carry yourself with dignity, peace, you don't feel the need to prove your innocence, your goodness, your intentions. You let people think what they want because you know who you are. That is not detachment, it's maturity. Inner peace. It's the evolution from needing to be liked to needing to be whole. And wholeness doesn't beg. It doesn't explain. It doesn't shrink. There is a quiet elegance in not responding. There is grace in restraint. Peace. And there is healing in honoring your own boundaries, even if others feel slighted by your silence. The people who are meant for you will not need constant explanations. Peace. They will not require you to justify your peace. They will understand your silence and respect it. But those who demand your words out of entitlement or control will be unsettled by your stillness. Let them be. Peace. You do not owe your voice to everyone who calls your name. You do not owe your energy to everyone who tries to stir your emotions. When you respect yourself, peace, you no longer rush to make others comfortable at your own expense. You begin to carry your silence like a crown, worn with intention, carried with pride. You speak when it serves your values. Peace. When it elevates the moment, when it reflects the depth of your understanding. But when it doesn't, you say nothing. Because silence in that moment says everything. Peace. It says you have arrived at a place where you no longer need to prove yourself. And that place, that posture, is the highest form of self-respect. There is a deep and underestimated power in the unspoken. Peace. In a world that thrives on announcements, updates, and constant declarations, the most impactful shifts in a person's life often happen in complete silence. They happen in the late hours when no one is watching. Peace. When the decision to let go, to grow, to change, or to walk away is made without drama or fanfare. And these moments, while quiet, carry seismic weight. A woman may not speak of the heartbreak that broke her. Peace. Or the betrayal that woke her, or the breakthrough that changed her. But when she steps out the next day with her head held higher and her steps more grounded, you feel it. You feel it not in her words, peace, but in her energy. That is the kind of power that cannot be faked or forced. It is the result of choosing transformation over attention. The choice to evolve without needing to explain the journey. Peace. The most powerful statements are often not spoken at all. They are made through presence, through decisions, through what you no longer react to. When a woman stops responding to disrespect, peace, stops defending herself against lies, stops lowering her standards to accommodate others, she is making a thunderous declaration. Even if she never utters a word, her silence is not empty. It is a message. Peace. It is her saying, I've changed without having to convince anyone. The beauty of these silent statements is that they are undeniable. People can argue with your words, twist your explanations, peace, challenge your reasoning, but they cannot argue with your growth. They cannot deny what your silence communicates when it is backed by action, by peace, by elevation. Peace. There is a certain grace in choosing not to explain the choices you've made, especially when those choices came after pain, after deep reflection, after a war within yourself that no one else witnessed. Peace. You don't owe anyone a step-by-step summary of your healing. You don't have to justify why you cut ties, why you outgrew certain circles, why you no longer entertain the same conversations. Peace. Your shift is your message. The silence surrounding it is the clarity. Because people will notice, they may not say anything, but they will feel the difference. The absence of your availability. Peace. The stillness in your energy. The peace that replaced the chaos. And though some may be confused or even offended by your silence, deep down they know it speaks volumes. Peace. Choosing to speak less and let your life speak more is not about withholding, it's about refining. You start to understand that your power doesn't lie in convincing others, but in becoming someone they can't deny. Peace. You let your consistency speak, you let your growth speak, you let your refusal to settle speak. A woman who no longer needs to narrate her transformation has stepped into true strength. Peace. Her silence is not about hiding, it's about honoring what is sacred. She protects her journey by keeping it close, not because she's ashamed of it, but because she respects its value. Peace. She knows that loud declarations often dilute deep truths. So she lets her actions, her elevation, and her peace tell the story. There is also a healing that happens in silence. Peace. When you stop trying to explain your pain, you begin to fully feel it. When you stop broadcasting your journey, you begin to actually walk it. It's in the silence that you meet yourself again. Peace. That you hear the quiet wisdom within. And that meeting, that reconnection, is what strengthens your core. It's what makes you unshakable. Peace. You realize that everything you need to become is already inside of you. It just needed the stillness to surface. And once you've touched that truth, you no longer rush to announce yourself to the world. Peace. You're not hiding, you're anchoring, you're becoming. And becoming takes place in sacred spaces, not public forums. Letting your silence speak also means releasing the need for revenge. Peace. The need to be understood, the need to correct the narrative. It means you've reached a level of emotional sovereignty where you understand that truth always reveals itself in time. Peace. That you don't need to correct every lie or defend every choice. That the version of you that emerges from stillness will be louder than any argument ever could be. People may write their versions of your story. Peace. But your evolution will outshine their assumptions. And the beauty is that your silence gives them space to see it. Not through confrontation, but through undeniable transformation. Peace. Some of the boldest decisions you will ever make will be made in silence. The decision to walk away, the decision to stay, the decision to start again. These moments won't come with applause. Peace. They won't be understood by everyone, but they will define you. And you'll find that in those moments, silence becomes your sanctuary. Peace. It becomes the place where you shed your old self and step into the woman you were always meant to be. You may not speak about it, but you'll live it, you'll wear it. You'll carry it in how you move. Peace. How you speak, how you no longer need to explain who you are. Ultimately, a woman who lets her silence speak has discovered a deeper language, one that doesn't require permission or approval. Peace. One that speaks directly to the soul of anyone paying attention. And in this language, the most powerful statement she ever makes is made without a word. It is made in how she holds herself. Peace. In what she no longer tolerates, in what she quietly walks away from, and in the peace that follows her like a shadow. That silence, when chosen with intention, becomes her loudest, clearest, peace and most unforgettable message.